Hey everyone, this is Jake, and today we are finally going to be talking about Xing in this review video, and we'll quickly go through some of her skill kits along with what makes her pretty good within PvP, and we'll talk about her usage within PvE and some gear options, and at the end I'll talk about what I think about her at the end of the day. But that is for the short intro. Let's jump into video and talk about Xing right away. So Xing is pretty simple unit. She is pretty much specializing in removing buff from enemies. So her basic skill is doing 2 ballot hits, is doing some AoE damage to the front area, nothing too much to look forward to. So let's jump into her passive skill. Her passive skill increases her evasion by 10% every time she attacks for 8 seconds, and this goes up to 50%. So if she attacks 5 times, she'll be getting 50% evasion boost, which is pretty nice buff. And after every 2 basic attacks, she delivers an enhanced attack, and it randomly removes 1 non-permanent buff casted on the enemies. So this makes her pretty decent usage into certain situations that she is able to remove the buff from the enemies. And the way it looks like a pretty good passive skills, but only downside is that she's at the front a lot of times, and sometimes she is not the reliable way that you want to have to remove the buffs from the enemies, because sometimes if she can't survive for long enough, then she'll be just losing out and she won't be able to remove the buff from the enemies. But as long as you can keep her alive to a certain level, this passive will come really handy, and you should be able to have a decent result out of her in certain situations in PvE, and against certain enemies within PvP, you're gonna have a pretty good counter against them with this unit. And as you level up her passive skill, you should be getting more attack. And when you max out her passive skill, enhanced attack will always inflict the crit damage, which is pretty good. Now, when it comes to special skills, it is where she kind of shines a lot. She charges forward, swinging a dagger, and then leaps backward, inflicting AoE damage. The first attack randomly removes a 1 non-permanent buff, and this has pretty short cooldown time in my opinion, and it does pretty decent damage along with the nice range. So this is the key source of removing the buff, because this can remove the buff very safely, and she just leaps backward. So this special skill is more reliable way to remove the buff from the enemies and make sure she stays around the field for a little bit more. And then we move on to the ultimate skill, which is really cool skill, definitely one of my favorite ultimate skills within the game. She charges at the target with both of her daggers and inflicts AoE damage on surrounding enemies. The first attack randomly removes a 2 non-permanent buff from the enemies. So this is another great way to remove the buff from the enemies. And as you level up the skill, she'll be doing more damage with the skill, and when you max out the skill, immunity to all damage for 6 seconds after the skill, making her really good way to stay alive for a long time. So this actually works really well with the special skill as well, because most likely when you're done casting the skill, you should have her special skill charged up pretty nicely, and not to mention this immunity definitely helps her to be able to stay alive for a little bit longer. Another thing is this skill has pretty long casting animations, and this skill can like the air juggle enemies, so which is pretty good within Gauntlet. They could be pretty annoying enemies out, because the enemies would get hit by the skills and they'll be kind of air juggling by her, and they can't really do anything until she finishes attacking with her skills. Then also when she starts to cast a skill, the skill recharge will start to happen right away, so that's another really positive thing. Overall, this ultimate skill makes her like the ultimate Gauntlet character, because she gets a huge invincible frame, not to mention some of the immunity to all damage after the casting the skill. So faster you can trigger the skill, the real usefulness you will see her within the Gauntlet. But overall, I think she is definitely a pretty good unit when it comes to her skill kit, when it comes to Gauntlet. When it comes to PvE contents, I have some footage that I can show it to you guys, maybe where you can consider using her. But overall, I think she is definitely more a Gauntlet character with the skill kits she has. So we talked about how good Yan's skill really is, especially with the Gauntlet, and you really want to trigger fast enough to build up the immunity and able to just disrupt the enemy's front line and the back line. So to be able to do that, you really need a good cooldown set. So a Maze Crown, like full Maze So like a full mage set with a cooldown set with a skill hate substats will definitely help you out. So as you can see in this clip, I'm using the 72% skill hate setup here. So with the setup, she should be able to spam her skill as fast as possible. Some other options you can consider, I think, is definitely the Gordius series. Those series with the close damage resistance is definitely going to be helping out to survive a little bit more hits from the enemies. And if you can get the cooldown set on those gears, I think you will definitely be able to take a huge benefit from those gears as well. So consider those options. She should be able to get her job done, and you will really see how she shines with the gauntlet. So let's talk about her usage within PvE contents. I'm gonna be 100% honest, she is definitely not the best pick when it comes to PvE content. You can definitely use any other units inside of her. There is no real content right now that you need some characters through constant removing buff of the enemies. If there was content like that, then yeah, I think she'll be really good. So far, the popular uses she had within Korean server is definitely when she was selected as a, environmental buff unit within danger close content. In that option, she was pretty decent units. She was able to do a decent damage with her special skills along with her ultimate skills. Other than that content, I don't feel like I ever really needed to feel like we use her within PvE content. Shadow Hall, definitely don't really need her. Like I said, she's more of the frontal units, so she can't really take damage from all these strong enemies doing a lot of damage. So definitely not a good pick in that case. And when it also comes to other contents, let's say for like a raid, pretty much useless. Another really hard PvP content within Korean server right now is definitely the scavenger dive, and I don't think she's much useful within that content either. And other PvP contents like a challenge dungeon, I don't really record using her at all. Things could change maybe when the Act 4 finishes up or maybe Act 5 comes out, but as of right now, I don't really remember using her in any of those contents. So if you're a hardcore PvE guy, most likely you'll be kind of disappointed with her result. So that's your focus here. I don't think there's much for you to find within PvE contents. So let's talk about Yanxing within Gauntlet, the PvP. I think Yanxing is pretty decent pick right now within the C server, and you should be able to have a decent fun, and she should be able to counter some of the units that will be coming out in the future for the C server as well. Now, the only problem I can definitely say about the Yanxing is she is pretty weak and squishy, and there's going to be a lot of snipers units in the future that's able to do a huge amount of AoE damage while doing a lot of damage. For example, Replacer Queen should be able to do a huge stuns into AoE range, and when she gets stuns and get attacked by her a couple times, she'll be dead. When she gets caught in Amy's special skills along with her basic attack here and there, she'll be dead. So it is pretty risky character to use within Korean server right now. And not just that, there's some other really tanky character that doesn't really have a cast self buff on them, so they can just ignore her passive skills along with her special skills and just keep attacking her and she'll be dead. So in that case, I think she is definitely less useful. But I think when there's a week, there's Ministra, everything else is banned. And let's say if the Ministra, one of the Ranger Awakening units, if she's alive and Yanxing is not banned, I think Yanxing is definitely a pretty good way to jump into her and trying to stun lock her a little bit with her ultimate skills and trying to do some damage out of her to lower her HP in that way. Other than that, I think Yanxing definitely getting a less use within Korean server. When I was doing some PvP stream last night, I was actually getting swarmed by some of the striker comp, and Yanxing was kind of annoying here and there. But there's this other 3-cost striker units like a Bishop, which is really good units, and I think units like her is definitely a better pick when it comes to picking 3-cost units. There's always a lot of competition when it comes to 3-cost unit pulls, and I think Yanxing definitely lose out a little bit in that sense. But I think she is definitely useful time to time, so I don't think you should be really disappointed about her. Only way you will be disappointed about her is if you want to use her mainly for PvE content. She's definitely not the must-have units in those contents, so there's that. But pretty simple character. She's able to counter some units that has essential buff casted on them. She can remove those buffs, so she is going to be a good counter for them for the C server. Right now with the Korean server, kind of harder to use, but definitely pretty sexy unit. So yeah, come on. So pull her out if you want to enjoy for a while with the C server gauntlet. And if you want more future-proof character, probably not something you want to use. So when it comes to Yanxing, I think she is definitely 100% really solid striker units. It's just that when it comes to PvE, especially with the striker pros, there's way better units they can use. 3 cost units like Shihuyu, and Yanxing is just no match against to someone like her. Now when it comes to Gauntlet, there's this certain character that she can counter really well by herself, and she is pretty good meta character right now, and Yanxing is very good counter against her. But there's also Operator right now, they can just kind of trigger and get rid of the buff they have and not being able to buff themselves and stuff like that. So Yanxing is in a little bit kind of tricky spot, but I don't think she's nowhere near bad units. So whenever there's a chance, I think she always tends to come out and just to wipe the battlefield once again, time to time. It's just that she's no more like a tier 1 unit, I think she's pretty much like the tier 2 level now. But within C server, I think she should be very annoying, especially if you fight against the one that has really good gear. But that is my opinion on her. If you really want her for PvP usage, I think you will have a lot of fun with her. And definitely there are certain units that's coming out in the future that's both good in PvE and PvP altogether, so you probably want to save up those characters, which I will be doing as well. But anyways, that is from me for this video today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's Jake. I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.